All right, so yeah, definitely we got our guest on the line with us, so we're gonna go right to that conversation. Today's guest is Khalid Salaam. He's the deputy editor at the Shadow League, and he's also on the team of Slam Magazine. The reason that we're bringing him on today is because he wrote an article about 10 days ago entitled "Kyrie Irving and the Death of the Ghetto Superstar." In this article, he points out how we foolishly used to judge players' authenticity by their quote-unquote street cred, but players like Kyrie Irving and a few others are putting it into that theory. So we're going to bring him on the line right now. Welcome into the War Room the first time. Khalid, what's going on, brother? You're in the War Room.
What's going on, people?
All right, Khalid, what's going on? This is Jimmy. I'll start us off here. First, I just want to say what a great article, and the reason that we were attracted to it is because these are conversations that we have in the War Room all the time in terms of people trying to pigeonhole African Americans and African American athletes, into one type of a person. So when we read this article, we shared it amongst each other and tweeted it out. We really enjoyed it. So first off, salute to you for writing the article.
Oh man, I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
And
absolutely, brother. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
The first question I had about the article, you talk about Kyrie Irving, but do you think it was a matter of timing? Because you mentioned Kobe Bryant, and we all thought about Kobe Bryant initially when reading the article, how he was a guy who was from the suburbs, but his game was undeniable. What is the difference between Kyrie Irving and Kobe Bryant in terms of his acceptance?
It's partially the era we're in. It's just that was 20 years ago when Kobe came up. Or almost 20 years ago, and people have gotten used to certain images of black people. Information is different. We understand things more. There's more nuance, from inside the black community and outside of it. People understand things differently than they did 20 years ago. That has a lot to do with it. Definitely. And I think also just the fact that Kobe played on such a high-profile team, so the Lakers, always on TV, even though they weren't winning rings in the 90s, still the Lakers. And, they're a team people follow closely, so people overanalyze things. So people overanalyze Kobe. Nobody's really analyzing the Cavaliers like that, you know what I mean? It's kind of different energy.
This is true. Other than that, it's funny because we're all from the inner city, but we like to say, it's a difference of being in the inner city and having so-called street cred. So, one of the things about basketball, and we always talk about basketball as like a culture, and it's taught a lot of us, many things. When you're in a basketball court, you don't care whether someone is white, what their sexual preferences, their religion. All you care about is whether they can hoop or not. So It's not surprising that, basketball will be the sport where this kind of thing, is accepted more than others. But B. Austin, you had a point you wanted to make as well, right?
Sure. Khalid, B. Austin here. Thank you first and foremost for joining us this evening on the War Room. Glad to have you.
You guys just call me Kyle, man. On my face, call me Kyle.
Got you. Thank you, Kyle. Being early 30-something hip hop heads, we've all heard the big lyric: either you slang crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. With basketball kind of being a major source of creativity and an outlet to the pressures of quote unquote American ghetto life. Do you think it was kind of a positive for a lot of these inner city youth to see a player they could identify with and feel as one of their own? Kind of an alternative, no matter how realistic or unrealistic, to some of the other negative images of success in the American dream in the hood?
I think it's a very good, thing to see for players, but not just players, man, for people in general. Like the bigger. If Kyrie becomes like a mainstream, brand recognition type of star, which he seems to be on the way to doing that, it'll change the narrative, because that narrative needs to be changed quick, fast, and hurry. And it's not a put down in the city. I'm an inner city guy too.
Right.
But the point I'm making is these ideas of being put in the box, and oftentimes we get put in the box by other people. And we don't allow ourselves to go out of that box, and people don't want us to get out of that box. And being in a box allows you to be controlled, And being controlled is one of the biggest problems that still control our community. We think we don't understand these things in the terms we need to, though. So it's like we think, okay, well, so and so is you know, so-and-so was ghetto because he's this, or so-and-so is this because he's this, or he's from this place because he's this. Mm-hmm. You can be from any place and be anything. Mm-hmm. And in 2013, absolutely, that, you know, that feeling of what anybody can be needs to be taken off. I mean, you know, it's the 21st century, man. You know, they got machines that control. They got satellites that can read your handwritten notes. You know, they can do all kinds of things now. We still living in old times, a way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and people who deserve a chance to be what they want to be.
So it sounds like you're sort of
the right to live the life they want to live, man.
You're subscribing to and trumpeting the ideals of individualism and the presence of exceptional individuals. You know, that gets past limiting the narrative. That's what I'm hearing from somewhere.
Right. There needs to be a new narrative, mm-hmm, and that we need it so badly, because when you think, mm-hmm, about it, you know, other races and you know, cultures and ethnicities, they have any number of narratives. Mm-hmm. You could be this guy, you could be that guy, you could be this, mm-hmm, guy, you could be you know it's whatever. It's double-digit narratives, 15, right, 20 options, right, for the average white guy. You know, for the average, right, black guy, it's like three or four.
Three or four, right?
You could be the ghetto kid. You could be like a you know, a buppy or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you could be like a jock, like you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, you're absolutely right. And
that's not that many things they want you to be.
Right. And that's why going back to his question, that big lyric, that's why it was so powerful when said, because many people felt that way. And
right.
You're right. It has to be
true.
changed.
Because it's absolutely true.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid you want to be an engineer. Like, let's say you're from the projects, but you want to be an engineer. An engineer? What?
That's not cool. That's not cool at all.
It's not cool.
That means you're doing a lot of math stuff.
But it's not even necessarily.
You know what I'm saying? He's doing a lot of math. And dudes are like, if the math is not with money, we won't do that kind of math.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, but along those same lines, this is Dev Kai. Along those lines, for the people who didn't read the article, you spoke of the root of this quote unquote trend being like the 80s and the crack epidemic and, you know, ghetto culture from back then, the materialism from drug dealers and mm-hmm. you know, people of that sort. Can you kind of speak on that for the people who haven't read the article yet, and kind of, you know, where you think the root of this problem stems?
Well, how old are you guys? I'm in my mid-30s. I'm 37.
Yeah,
I guess that's not mid anymore. I can't even say mid anymore.
Right.
I'm 35.
I'm holding on to mid. Mid is like 34. I'm 37. So
I'm 21.
I'm right in the mid.
We're a couple years younger than you.
I'm 20. I'm 21 every year.
We're all from the same generation, though.
Got you. So you know, if you grew up in the 80s like we did, you know, you 13, 14, 15, whatever in the 80s, you remember how you know, the stakes were so high. Right. Like, kids were getting smoked just for any kind of reason, and the drama of the crack game had people on edge. But the way that kind of the legacy of the crack generation, or the crack era, is what I mentioned, is that it brought materialism into our lives in a very intimate way.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, like, having things and wanting things, that goes on, you know, for the since the beginning of time. Everybody wants to have better things, you know. Usually you have to, you know. Go ahead.
And not to cut you off, I cut you off, but that was just part of the whole 80s in general. It was like, you know, the
right.
whole greed thing. Even on Wall Street, the whole greed is good movement. Like, right. you know, that just was part of the culture in the 80s, the materialism. Like, you know, whether it was in the inner city or even in the boardroom, the 80s was all about greed. And I noticed how
Absolutely.
I noticed how your article in the comments turned into an argument about Reaganomics. I found that interesting. But
the thing is, you know, people. I mean, you know, the guys who follow the Reagan acolytes, his fans, they love that man.
man.
I mean, they love that man. They'll kiss that man in the mouth. They love Ronald Reagan. You know what I mean? Like, it's different. It's a different kind of love. Like, this dude, I respect that man. I like that man's vision or whatever. You know, they like that man on a different level.
But it's amazing how
I'm not surprised that they came out like that.
But it's amazing how his supporters, like I see over the last decade, it's gotten out of control.
Yeah, they did fight it. He's like a god to them. He's like literally like a god.
And that's because they see their world. If you talk about the narratives, right? Their world, their narrative, with their perception of the power structure in this country, it's slipping away, and so they kind of hold him in a high esteem as representing, the immediate past and a representation of their power, if you will.
Right. And for a lot of them, certainly
the neocons.
Right, exactly. For a lot of them from the business class, the 80s, was the apex of that kind of thinking.
Right. Right.
When I talked about regulation, what that really means is getting rid of rules. Meaning, I can get over on anybody and nobody's going to stop me. That's all regulation is. So when things are deregulated, that means you're taking all the rules out. And in the 80s, there were a lot of things you could do, like companies would have chemicals and they poured into the local rivers and stuff because there were no rules.
Yeah.
And as long as the profit margin kept going up, people want profit margin, and whatever else happens, hey, I don't live in that neighborhood anyway, so I don't really care that the river is polluted.
Absolutely.
I don't really care that the air is bad, that it's lead in lead in the school, whatever. Because what we doing, we don't care. We eating so well, we don't care. And if we do get sick, fine, we got the best doctors we can get anyway. That's all that is. That's what that is. People think deregulation is controlling the market. No, it's protecting the market from greed. And what greed really equals is death. That's what it equals. Greed equals death. And people want to make money off of stuff regardless. And one of the things about the 80s is that the bar for death was raised so high, both psychologically and just in people's everyday lives. If you lived in the inner city, you saw death right up close and personal.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it changed a lot of our minds about things. A lot of us growing up, we're impressionable kids, especially young boys growing up. We trying to find our way in the world. We trying to be men. You trying to get money. You're trying to understand how you function in a world where you don't really know how to do stuff.
Right.
A lot of us didn't have college graduates in our family. There wasn't nobody really explaining, well, this is what you got to do in order to get this stuff. Okay, so I got to go to school for this amount of years. Okay, but then we see my man on the corner. My man's only 2-3 years older than us. This man already got his own apartment, and he got whatever.
This is crazy because
this is how the thinking changed, and
right.
And it permeated its way right into our sports because it became from the whole greed is good concept to now is get rich or die trying. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how the thinking changed, and it was all based upon the result of that era.
Well, everything became like that. So so and it affected everything, including basketball. And it's like, well, so like if you're one of us, you came up like we did, we respect that. If you're from basically any place outside of the inner city or a major metropolitan area, you came up different than us. And part of it is jealousy. Like it's probably just jealousy and envy. We've seen these kids who didn't grow up like we did, still able to live the lives that we hope to live.
So we gravitate towards the other one. Go ahead, Dad.
No, I'm saying, speaking of that, since we're all from Philly, so, we witnessed firsthand the 10-year run of the poster child of the ghetto superstar / street cred baller and Allen Iverson. But AI aside, because, save for the way his legacy's playing out now, his mark in the NBA, in my opinion, is undeniable. But, Kai, do you find, now this is a question basically about the fans, do you find that many black people tend to overrate certain athletes across all sports because of the quote-unquote street cred that they possess?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a gang of, there's a reason why I use the Steph Marbury picture. And it's not a knock against Marbury. He was a talented player. He made it. Regardless of what you think about his career, he made a lot of money and changed his whole life and his whole family's life. So it's not a knock on Marbury as a personal person. It was more so what he represented, not only to people in the inner city, but also companies. And one of the things I learned when I worked at Slam years ago is that street cred is a real thing for the business class too. It isn't just like a thing that kids, in high school or dudes in the hood think about. Those guys who, with Brooks Brothers suit and ties, who got homes in Martha's Vineyard or whatever, these guys believe in street cred. Because street cred, again, for them equals money. Regardless of the fact that the side effects might equal death for other people, it doesn't really matter. And it's like that same thing. The death and the greed go together time and time. So these guys don't really care about what the side effects are. They live in Park Avenue or they live wherever they live, and they work for this company, that company that make these sneakers, these kind of jeans, that make these kind of clothes, these kind of whatever, these kind of songs, whatever. The whole street cred thing is a business mentality. And it's like, so how are we going to make this guy, our artist,
brand ambassador?
How are we going to make him sell?
Brand ambassador.
How does he make money for us?
Yeah.
By having this image, right? Right. So we're going to make sure we promote this. Regardless of what happens to kids or anybody growing up who are impacted by this image, we don't really care what happens to these kids.
Right. Like, as far as fans are concerned, like, you know, I can use a name maybe like a Michael Vick. I'm not sure exactly what you think about Michael Vick and his game, but you know,
you guys got to start reading Shadow League. You would know.
I know. I want to be quiet because
brother.
Again, I'm not anti-Vick.
He's trash.
My thing is, it's not. You know, I'm not a hater.
Pro.
I'm not a. But as an Eagles fan, I want him out. That's just me. He has a ceiling. His ceiling is crazy low, in my opinion.
So like, if you talk to a lot of fans, like when it comes to Mike Vick, this is like where I find
a lot of black fans.
Oh my God.
This is where the street cred thing plays really, you know,
out in the open
because they argue for him like there's no other.
Like
because
there's people who think Mike Vick is a top 10 quarterback. I was like, he's never been a top 10 quarterback.
He's never been a top 15.
Like, you know, even in his first season with the Eagles, when he was second runner-up for MVP, I think that had to do with more so the surprise factor.
Yeah.
Like, his stats weren't really all that. Like, he threw.
And it was only sustained over about 8 games. People forgot by the time the Giants game came, the Miracle in the Meadowlands part
the Bears figured him out.
He had already regressed. Even in that game, it just that game, the way it ended, you know, it kind of kept everything, you know, on the forefront, kind of kept the momentum going. But yeah, but that's one of the athletes that we find when we're in sports circles. People defend Mike Vick to no end, and I think they kind of overrate what he actually does on the football field. And I think it's all due to them being able to relate to him more than they can relate to the next guy on the NFL field. So I thought that was a good example to bring up in, you know, talking about your article.
Rooting for the underdog, rooting for, you know, a representation of a disenfranchised community. And the thing that I love about sports is it's an opportunity to have social dialogue about, you know, some of the issues that come to the forefront with your article, but it's also an opportunity to take a man and look at the man for what he is and his talents and throw a lot of things out of the window and just say, you know, well, let's talk about the sport. Let's talk about the strategy and tactics behind the sport. And let's talk about the numbers and where that person fits in. All of the where Mike Vick came from, you know, his story, respect it, understand it, celebrate it for what it is. But this man right now, today, as an NFL quarterback, is trash. And here's why. Here's why. And this is my conversation. It's kind of funny because we get into these conversations with people from different walks of life, different social backgrounds. So to the black people, a lot of times I find that we're saying, let's look at this guy's game. Let's get everything out of the way. Let's look at his game. Wow. To the white folks, it's like you're having a conversation. Well, he's a dog killer. He's a murderer. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's slow down because that has nothing to do with him as a player. So it's kind of interesting what these guys represent to different people.
It's funny you say that because it's like people don't have the ability to be objective because of they can't separate the man from the player. And Kai, the question I have is I do read the Shadow League and I read a lot of your articles, so I know how you feel about Mike Vick, but I also see how a lot of your your peers feel about him. So do you guys ever get into arguments over there? Because I think a lot of them
all the time. All the time.
I could only imagine because you guys had an article that.
Because to me, Vick is the perfect example of that. It's like if Vick had the same exact numbers, same exact career. Let's say he would have did the dog stuff. He would have went to jail. The same exact numbers, but he wasn't from
Bad News.
Newport News, right? He's from Newport News.
Yeah.
Let's say he wasn't from Newport News. Let's say he's from Richmond or whatever. You know, or just there's a lot of nice areas of Virginia. In that whole area. Let's say he's from a nice
Hampton. He's from Hampton.
Right. The whole idea of how we felt about him being entirely different. entirely different. We wouldn't care about him as much. We wouldn't care.
Yeah.
We would still like him because he was fast, athletic, black, et cetera, et cetera. But he would just been another name. He wouldn't be the way he is now. People love Mike because they think his story is somehow more authentic.
Yeah.
This is the most authentic expression of being of blackness, of what it means to be a black person in America. And I'm like, it is not. It is just one part of it, and it's one part in a lot of ways that we have to stop making stuff change. Like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. I went to school in Atlanta. I went to Clark. So, like, when I first started going to school, I'll be honest, I didn't really know a lot about, I didn't know a lot of rich kids growing up, really any. I knew some kids who might have had money, but they were like international students and stuff. So it didn't really resonate the same with me. But so I go to school, and it's, regular black people with and their parents was like pay their tuition with like a check. Like, here you go. Like, and I'm like, yo, you don't gotta go. You meet people. I'm like, you don't gotta do no financial aid stuff. He's like, no, my dad paid it. I was like, paid what? My tuition. Just at one moment with his check. Tuition is like, you paid for both semesters at one time. So we're talking about, upwards of $22,000 just like that. So I'm like, so if you got $22,000 just to write the check, that means your bank account is diesel. Like, you know what I mean? You got 22 stacks, you just blow right there. That has no impact on what you do on a regular basis. What I learned was that a lot of those kids from those nice areas, and their dads are senators and et cetera, a lot of those kids had a lot of anxiety about being from those kind of families. Mm-hmm. And they really wanted to be seen as, in the city, they wanted to be seen as, ghetto and whatever they thought that meant. For them, it meant street cred in a way. It meant they were tough. And they were more black somehow. They were more authentic. They felt like their background made them somehow less authentic. And they would always say, we would have the debates in school, in class about stuff, different artists, the rappers at the time, and how, what the impacts were, how it felt or whatever. And what I noticed was they really valued in the city stuff. And I was like, my man, we could switch right now. Like if you think this is what's good, we can switch parents, whatever. We can switch all of this. Because I'm telling you, this is not how it really goes. It's a hard way to live if you're from the inner city.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I'm less or more black than you. I'm telling you, it just means we're just equally as black, but you have a better chance to have success in your life because your dad wrote your tuition in one check. And you shouldn't feel bad about the fact that your dad could do that. It's a backwards way of thinking, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what, though? Bringing it back to Kyrie Irving in the article, I guess you would have to. Is AAU made a huge difference in this? Because now, you have the best players playing the best players regardless of neighborhood and things of that nature because AAU has become more prevalent.
Yeah, AAU definitely has an impact. AAU definitely has an impact of taking guys and mixing people together. So, different people from different cities, different neighborhoods have a chance to be around each other. And that has an impact, too. There were like some things about that I thought about including in the story, but I didn't want to make the story too long.
Yeah,
but, AAU definitely has a big impact in it because it's so prevalent. You can't even, if you're nice at any level in basketball, regardless of where you're from or whatever, you're playing AAU ball. That's just what it is.
Yeah. Right. And like I know, because you're from Philadelphia, so you know that when it comes, like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to hoops, you don't care nothing about, when you're on the court, all you care about is whether they can hoop or not. You know what I mean?
You don't even know. I mean, you don't really know. You see a guy with shorts on and sneakers. You have no idea who his parents are.
Absolutely.
You don't know this guy's dad is the mayor. You know what I mean? Or whatever. You don't know what's going on.
And speaking of, like, we couldn't talk about this whole thing without bringing up, the whole Jalen Rose comments about
the Fab Five.
About Grant Hill. I mean, we don't really have to talk about it, but we definitely have to bring it up. The whole Uncle Tom comments, because when you said that, when you gave us that story from when you were in school, it kind of reminded me of that. Like, it's just a backwards way of thinking that you're not cool because your parents were able to pay, a check for your tuition, or, you didn't come up without your dad or something like that. Like,
it's conditioning, man.
It is conditioning, and it's a kind of condition that limits people, because you're judging somebody and making them your enemy or adversary based upon something that really should make y'all united.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. And the thing that's even more tricky about it, Is that how we think about it? Is also how mainstream thinks about it. So like if you're from the hood, I mean, especially depending on what industry you're in. But if you're from the hood, mainstream America loves you and thinks you're also more black. You know what I mean? They think you're more black. Oh, he's from the project.
You know what?
Okay.
That's why
he's cool.
And that's why your article was like, that's why it resonated with us, and more people need to have these conversations, man. So at the end of the day, man, we appreciate you for writing that. Appreciate you for writing that article, man.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
It's something that spoke to me because I mean, for one, Kyrie's game is so skilled, and it reminds you of a lot of street ball dudes. Really, like his game, his handle is come on, yo.
Yeah,
this is next level. It really is. It's next level. Like I'm like, yo, there hasn't been a guy with his handle since Iverson.
But look, man, we definitely appreciate you coming on. We got to get to some more segments, but we'd love to have you back. Anytime you got something that you need to say, the War Room is home to you. We actually have relationships with a few people over there at the Shadow League. Keith Clinkscales, and we did a panel with Michael Tillery a few months ago.
Nice.
So, shout out to everybody over there at the Shadow League. We love what you guys are doing. But before we get you out of here, let everybody know how they can get to the Shadow League and how they can see your writing.
Oh, yeah, it's real simple. It's www.theshadowleague.com. And you'll come to that page, and you'll see all kind of stuff, and we'll make your life better.
No doubt.
Straight up and down.
And Kai, man, we appreciate it. And last thing, man, I also want to tell you I appreciate that article you did on Nas, Life is Good. So,
man. I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Appreciate it.
You know what? We do a segment called Hip Hop and Sports, so we might have to call you back for one of those too.
Hey man, I'm here for all kind of stuff. You want to talk about sports? Basketball. We can talk about quote unquote non-black stuff. Like I'm an animal dude. We can talk about lions and tigers, bro. It's nothing.
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my!
We can talk about all kind of stuff. So I'm on that National Geographic stuff, man. I'm good with all that.
You're not getting put in the box, right?
Nah, man. I don't do boxes. It's 2013, man. We above that, man.
All right, bro.
man.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for your time.
All right, take it easy, guys.
All right, take it easy.
Peace.
Kai, thank you.
Kuwait is the war room with 5 nights at the round table. 5 Philly guys diversified and educated.